Australia, the United Kingdom, and Canada will join the United States in a diplomatic boycott of the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics, the leaders of the three countries said Wednesday. Speaking at a news conference in Sydney, Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison said the government would keep its official representatives at home, although Australian athletes will still attend the Games in February. Morrison said, quote, "Human rights abuses and issues in Xinjiang were some of the concerns raised by the Australian government with Beijing." Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said his government was deeply troubled by Chinese rights violations. Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly mentioned concerns about the treatment of the Uyghur Muslim minority in the Xinjiang region, in line with the US and Australian explanations for their boycotts. Welcome back to the world of China. Give this video a big thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. It's free. Let's move on. In less than 2 months, China will open the 24th Winter Olympics in Beijing under the cloud of the coronavirus pandemic, and now also a diplomatic boycott intended to protest the host country's repressive policies. The White House announcement on Monday that it would send no official delegation provoked anger in Beijing, where Chinese officials Tuesday once again swore to avenge. This will only make people see the sinister intentions of the American side and will only make the American side lose more morality and credibility, said a spokesman for China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Zhao Lijian. Several countries, including Canada and Australia, have announced they will join the US in a diplomatic boycott of the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics to protest human rights abuses committed by China's government. Leaders have faced pressure from human rights groups and others to boycott the Games, pointing to the ongoing genocide of Uyghurs and other Muslim minorities in China's Xinjiang region and other abuses. Neither President Biden nor other American officials are going, but the Russian leader might. New Zealand says it's decided months ago that its diplomats wouldn't be attending. On Wednesday, Australia said its officials would be staying home too. Political leaders of other nations are expected to turn out, whether they announce a clear reason or not. Although the effect of Mr. Biden's decision on other countries remains to be seen, several have already signaled that they will strive for ways to convey umbrage with China's policies while stopping short of prohibiting athletes from attending. US athletes will still be allowed to compete in the Games, but the administration will not be sending government officials. The same policy applies to the 2022 Winter Paralympics scheduled for Beijing in March. The US will host the 2008 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles, while the 2032 Games will take place in Brisbane, Australia. Speaking on Wednesday, Morrison said Australia is a great sporting nation and he wished the IOC all the best for the Beijing Winter Games. The decision will be especially complicated for European nations, which have sharply slammed China's abuses of human rights and democracy in Hong Kong and Xinjiang. The European Union has just renewed for another year the business and travel restrictions it imposed a year ago on officials involved in the crackdown of Uyghurs and other Muslims in Xinjiang. And in July, the European Parliament, which often takes strong moral positions, overwhelmingly passed an invalid resolution calling on diplomatic officials to boycott the Winter Olympics unless the Chinese government demonstrates verifiable progress in the human rights concerning Hong Kong, the Xinjiang Uyghur region, Tibet, Inner Mongolia, and elsewhere in China. At the same time, many European nations have ample trade ties with Beijing that they do not want to risk an action that's likely only to offend China, not change it. Attendance at the Olympics in whatever form is a decision for respective member states, which are sure to be divided on this issue as on much else. Italy would not join the American boycott, and Italian government officials said on Tuesday, while France, Germany, and Britain were non-committal. If the Italian position changes, it'll be a direct slam to Beijing. Italy will host the Winter Games in 2026 and would be expected by Olympic tradition to send official delegates to these games, accepting the baton, as it were, from one host to another. Only a handful of world leaders attended the Summer Games in Tokyo, which were held after a year's delay because of the coronavirus pandemic. They include President Emmanuel Macron of France, whose country will host the next Summer Olympics in Paris in 2024, and he may be expected to attend these games because of the protocol. Germany has not sworn in its new government yet, and the coalition is expected to take a somewhat tougher line on China. Olaf Scholz, the incoming chancellor, refused to provide an answer on Tuesday. At a news conference, after a third question on the topic, he simply said, quote, "We think it's important to do everything you can to make the world work together internationally." Britain has not decided on a diplomatic boycott either, but there are calls from within the ruling Conservative Party to do so. Australia was joined later Wednesday by the UK and Canada. which said their diplomats and officials would not be attending the games. There will be effectively a diplomat boycott. There will be a diplomat boycott of the Winter Olympics in Beijing. No ministers are expected to attend. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson told the House of Commons. China's critics praised the White House for focusing international attention on China's long record of human rights abuses. These include crackdowns in Tibet and Hong Kong, as well as in Xinjiang, where more than 1 million Uyghurs and other Muslims have cycled through mass imprisonment and re-education camps. Beijing has been accused by the US and other Western nations of imprisoning more than 1 million Muslim-majority Uyghurs in detention centers in Xinjiang, where some former detainees claim they were tortured, raped, and forcibly sterilized. Beijing denies the allegations, saying the camps are re-education centers designed to fight separatism and Islamist terrorism in the far western region. Wednesday, the Chinese embassy in Australia criticized Canberra's decision to boycott the Games and said it would not improve already frigid relations between the two countries. Speaking at a news conference Wednesday, China's Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Lijian said, quote, "No one would care whether they come or not. Australian politicians' political stunt for selfish gains has no impact whatsoever on the Olympics to be successfully held by Beijing." Although the American decision had been expected, and administration officials said conveyed to Beijing in advance of Monday's announcement, the Communist Party government appeared flustered as well as outraged. Officials in Beijing last week tried to preempt any potential of a diplomatic boycott by saying they would not inflate invitations to foreign leaders to attend the Winter Games, leaving that task to national Olympic committees around the world instead. For many countries, especially China's Asian neighbors, the question of how to engage with Beijing around the Olympic Games has been fraught. Given the diplomatic sensitivities, some nations have bypassed any direct rebuke of Beijing. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida of Japan said on Tuesday that his country had not yet decided who would represent the country in Beijing, though some lawmakers have called for a boycott because of human rights abuses, territorial disputes, and Chinese aggression in regional seas. New Zealand said that it had also expressed concerns about human rights in China, but that it would not send top officials, mostly because of the pandemic. The obstacles to attending the Beijing Olympics are not just diplomatic. The hassles of the pandemic could reduce attendance, as they did in Tokyo. They could also give cover to nations that would simply rather not attend. However, now the question remains, will the boycott work or backfire? Well, that's all for today. Thanks for watching this video. If you have enjoyed this video, then give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to this channel. Watch more about who are the Uyghurs and why is China being accused of genocide. The link is in the description below.